Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our special presentation for the Feast of St. Catherine of Siena, April 29th, 2020. I'm Catherine Tully-Musenti, Vice President for Mission and Ministry at Molloy College in Rockville Center, New York. I am pleased to present this program on social justice in the Dominican perspective. I'm going to ask you all to stay muted, and if you have any questions that you would, after Sister Diane has had a chance to deliver her keynote message this morning on the social justice from the Dominican perspective, or from our panelists, I will read off any questions that you'd like us to ask. So by all means, do put it in the chat, and we will keep an eye on that. I welcome you to our 2020 St. Catherine of Siena lecture. This is the culmination of the end of what we traditionally at Molloy have as Founders Week. That's always the third week of April, and then the Feast of St. Catherine of Siena on April 29th is something that we like to make sure that people are aware of, and that we have an opportunity to be together. And as we had planned this way before March 10th, when the college went virtual, we decided that why not do it anyway, that we wanted to celebrate the day. We want to celebrate all of you and celebrate Molloy. And we had wonderful speakers lined up. So I thank everybody who has agreed to be part of this presentation. My team of collaborators are Maureen, Carey, and Joanne O'Brien. Maureen and Joanne are faculty liaisons to Mission and have helped plan this event. But it could not be done without those who willingly are giving their time to be part of the speakers and the panel. So I welcome Sister Diane Morgan, Melissa Gebbia, Ryan Coughlan, and Lisa Newland. Sister Diane, yes, we can clap virtually. So Sister Diane Morgan is a Dominican sister of Amityville. She has served as an educator and pastoral minister in parishes in the Diocese of Brooklyn and Rockville Center. She's a graduate of Molloy, and then she also graduated from the University of Notre Dame and Boston College. She's a member of the leadership team at the Amityville Dominicans from 2001 to 2007, and presently. Melissa Gebbia is the chairperson of the psychology department and in the School of Arts and Sciences, and has been a staunch member of social justice issues on the college campus for a number of years. Ryan Coughlan is new to Molloy. He's finishing his first year. What a first year to have, right? And he's in the School of Education and Human Services and teaches in our doctoral program, and he'll talk more about that during the panel. And Lisa Newland is faculty president, chairperson of the social work department, which is also housed in the School of Education and Human Services. So I thank you all for being with us. And Maureen and Joanne have put together a meditation to give us some time to be in the moment with each other. It's a wonderful opportunity to think about where we are in time and place, take a couple of deep breaths, and also connect with what today's presentation is all about. So I will let Joanne share her screen, and please enjoy this time of meditation. Thank you, Joanne.
Could everybody hear the music and the words?
No.
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 Yeah, I hope people had the time to enjoy the words that were there. So thank you very much. So now I'm going.
That happened.
What, Joe?
I'm not sure why that happened. I could hear it here.
I think because you were on mute, maybe. No?
I wasn't on mute, I don't think.
Yeah, you
Oh.
were.
I was?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. Nope, that's all right.
Still beautiful.
It was still beautiful. That's right.
It was. It was great.
I'll send it out to everybody.
Yes. So what I do want to do now is introduce Sister Diane Morgan. Sister Diane in January was kind enough to join us for our Mission Ambassador and Leadership Retreat. And at that time, she started to speak a little bit about, Dominican history, and just at the end of which she started talking about the issue of social justice and where it impacts or how it is such an important part of who we are as Dominicans. So we asked her if she would continue that and be with us today. So I am going to manage the PowerPoint, and I'm going to turn this over to Sister Diane Morgan. Welcome, Sister Diane.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, wherever you are, and all of your connections to Molloy that brings you here today. So in light of not being Italian, I will say buongiorno. And hoping that this presentation this morning is reflective for you. And that's, I think, all our hope for this day. So Joanne said, Kathy said a little bit about my background before, but as I was preparing for today, I was thinking, and I said this to Kathy and Mo and Joanne about a week ago. I said, I am a learner, not a scholar in the area of social justice, but the hope always within me is that learning leads to action, not just by myself, but with others. And the North American Dominican promoters of justice use this phrase in some of their writings: to promote the call of gospel justice, human rights, and climate justice. So that hope is embedded in what we do today. But today is the feast of Catherine of Siena. And as that beautiful reflection showed, the words with it and inviting us into this morning, as you saw, Catherine was a woman of the 14th century. She's a Dominican of the third order, tertiary. And she and Teresa of Avila back in 1970 were both named Doctors of the Church, the first women to have received that title and that recognition. Catherine was a woman on fire with love for God and God's people, a shining example of social justice in action, and a woman on the move, as Mo's artwork shows us so beautifully. I'm not sure, Mo, but there is a statue of Catherine on the street in Rome that leads to the Vatican. And I think Catherine has that same pose of forward movement and motion.
Yes. I took it from that.
Yeah, well, yours is beautiful as well. Catherine, being born in 1347, 1 year before the Black Plague. And it has been said that that plague took the lives of 1/3 of the population of Europe. And as she grew up, she saw the effects of this catastrophic event in Siena and in Italy and the countries she was in, which is also another background for us as we and millions throughout the world deal with COVID-19, with this pandemic. Catherine was a woman of prayer and contemplation, but for her, at God's insistence and invitation, that contemplation flowed into action. Catherine was a mystic, She became a member of the Mantelate lay members, Third Order Dominicans, and they sought to follow the way of Jesus and to pursue holiness of life, but within their own lifestyle and within their own homes and the places in which they lived. It's been documented in much of the writing about Catherine, how she attended to the needs of the sick, and her efforts, either in person or through her hundreds of letters, how she tried to negotiate peace between warring city-states in Italy. But one of the stories, well, two stories that I can think of, one was some of the people that she helped, whether in the hospital or whether they were sick at home. It seems one woman in particular, a story I read, was not always appreciative. And when we were praying in my house this morning with my local community, I reflected on that. And it seems as this woman was very verbally abusive to Catherine. And yet Catherine persevered. She kept nursing her, taking care of her. And when we were praying, I said, I don't know. I'm not quite at that point of sanctity. I probably would have kind of packed up my wares and gone on my way. But just a reminder of the strength of spirit and the action that did flow from Catherine's prayer. But there's another story of a man who was sentenced to death because he had spoken against some government officials. And so he was in prison awaiting execution. He did not want to see a priest, but for whatever reason, he did allow Catherine into his cell. And it said that she spoke to him gently and with great compassion. And in turn, he had the capacity to open up and to speak to her from his heart. This is what Catherine herself says about that day. I waited for Niccolo at the place of execution, and as I waited, I kept praying. Before he arrived, I lay down and stretched my head on the block and begged Mary for the grace I wanted, namely, that I might give him light and peace of heart at the moment of death. Catherine remained with him and gave him strength and heard the prayer that he uttered at the time of his execution. Catherine invites us today and every day, as she was invited, to walk on 2 feet, love of God and love of neighbor, prayer and action. And so it's in that spirit of Catherine that we enter into this presentation today, Social Justice from the Dominican Perspective. As I was preparing for this, I came across a document that was prepared 5 years ago by the Catholic Committee of Appalachia. And I know that Appalachia has a special place in Molloy's heart because I think for more than 20 years, students have been involved in projects there, working with young people and adults in Kermit, West Virginia, at the Big Laurel Learning Center. And so in 2015, a committee of lay people and religious and priests called the Catholic Committee of Appalachia prepared a document. They called it a pastoral letter, but it was the people's pastoral. Prior to this, back in 1975 and after that, bishops of the region had written documents about the beauty and the challenge faced in Appalachia. This is an excerpt from the 2015 People's Pastoral. The loss of livelihood without anything to replace it is an old story in Appalachia, which has only worsened with time. Many people impacted by fracking cannot help but think that this is but a new chapter in the same old story, a story of resource extraction in Appalachia. The story of this region is the story of what many call a sacrifice zone one of the many places of suffering in our world that are exploited for the sake of a global economy. An economy that seeks the maximization of profit at any cost and funnels wealth to those at the top. One of the writers of that document, in the course of their work, framed their work with a question. What does it mean to be human in this place? I believe that that question runs like a thread through our reflection today. So wherever we find ourselves, a question before us, what does it mean to be human in this place? Today's title, Social Justice from the Dominican Perspective. I looked for one description of social justice, and I found it, and it was stated in this way: the way in which human rights are manifested in the everyday lives of people at every level of society. Human rights manifested in our everyday lives wherever we find ourselves in society. But as I was thinking about that, I'm sure we're all aware of how in more recent years, how interconnected are the issues of social justice and environmental justice. The other part of the title is a Dominican perspective. So what does our study, teaching, and action as Dominicans on behalf of social justice, how do we find that in the lives of the members of the Dominican family? Whether that means friars, sisters, religious brothers, contemplative nuns, third order, Dominican young adults, Dominican associates. How do we see that in the life of the members of the Dominican family? And you'll see the title for today right there on the screen. And as we enter this reflection, the first part is to realize that from a Dominican perspective, that view is situated within the larger body of Catholic social teaching. And so some of the elements of that body of wisdom are noted here on the slide, that the roots of Catholic social teaching are found in the scriptures, both the Hebrew prophets, who, as we know, announced God's special love for the poor, and also in the life and the works and the mission of Jesus. The beginning of Luke's gospel, as cited here, Luke chapter 4, Jesus announces, why has he come? To bring glad tidings to the poor, liberty to captives, and recovery of sight to the blind. And how Jesus identifies himself with the least, the hungry, the naked, the imprisoned, and so on. And so Catholic social teaching flowing from scripture shows this commitment to those most vulnerable in our society. And so this body of wisdom, and I'd call it a living body of wisdom, as we just mentioned, has its roots in scripture, its roots in 2,000 years of church writing and church teaching, but also in the lived witness of people like Catherine, people like ourselves, people that we know, people famous and not famous, who have responded deeply in their action to the social needs of their time, as they responded to the question, what does it mean to be human in this place? Catholic social teaching does not give us any easy answers, but with God's help, hopefully we're open to the insights as we listen and learn with one another, as we pray and engage in action, gives us insights to respond to our brothers and sisters around us. So over the years, as this body of knowledge has developed, we can find 7 themes in Catholic social teaching. And As we see them on the ensuing slides, you'll see some graphics, and I'll just say a little brief description about each of these themes. So Kathy, we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So the first of the 7 is life and dignity of the human person. As we reflect on the meaning of that, we realize that all people are sacred, made in the image and likeness of God. No one loses their dignity because of disability or poverty or age or race or lack of success. This theme, this principle, emphasizes people more than things, emphasizes who we are, not what we have. The second theme is call to family, community, and participation. And we know that as human beings, we are not only sacred, but also social. We realize our dignity and rights, not just individually, but in relationship with others, in community. We are called to respect all of God's gifts of creation and to be good stewards, not just for ourselves, but for one another. As I continue with these themes, and as I was preparing for this, in the background, I think, is just the overwhelming reality of all of the implications, not even totally understood yet, of the pandemic that we are facing. Kathy, you can go to the next slide. So rights and responsibilities, the third of 7 themes. People have a fundamental right to the basic needs for life, which are life, food, shelter, healthcare, education, and employment. All people have a right to participate at different levels, but to participate in decisions that affect their lives. In addition to having rights, we also have responsibilities, again, to respect the rights of others in wider society and to work for the common good. And so who are our brothers and sisters? To the slide, the image on the right, you see it says option for the poor and the vulnerable. It has been said that the moral test of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable members. The poor have the most urgent moral claim on the conscience of a nation. And so we are all called to look at public policy decisions in terms of how they affect the poor. I can remember a number of years ago, there was a bishop, and he made it a practice to travel from parish to parish in his diocese. And if he attended a meeting, whether it was the Pastoral Council or the Rosary Society, it seems he always stated during that meeting, and how does this impact the poor? So as we go to the next slide, the dignity of work and the rights of workers. That people have a right to decent and productive work, fair wages, private property, and economic initiative. And a statement on this theme, very simply said, but not simple to live, the economy exists to serve people, not the other way around. Solidarity. The realization that we are one human family. Our responsibilities to each other cross national, racial, economic, and ideological differences. We are called to work globally for justice. And I think, again, just have it in the back of your mind, the evening news, filled with images, not just of here in the New York area, but in our country and in our world, of the effect of the pandemic, how we are one family. In the last slide, the 7th theme, care for God's creation. To realize that creation is a gift to us from God. And as we come more and more to appreciate the fact that we are called to be stewards and not consumers and users. A very profound challenge for us in this time and this place. And so these are the themes that have been articulated. Where do we see them? You know, the expression when the rubber hits the road. Where do we see these themes lived out, these themes of Catholic social teaching? So one would be from papal, meaning from the Vatican, from the Pope, and conciliar, various council documents from 1891 to the present. So why 1891? In that year, Pope Leo XIII wrote an encyclical entitled Rerum Novarum. And many people who are scholars in this field consider that a benchmark of the teaching, Catholic social teaching. Because what Leo acknowledged in that encyclical was that Catholic social thought was moving, realizing that there was the shift from an agrarian economy to the effects of manufacturing and the Industrial Revolution. He highlighted the dignity of persons, the rights of workers, and support of unions. If we move ahead all the way to 5 years ago, 2015, you see there an image of Pope Francis and the encyclical that he wrote entitled Laudato Si, and the English title that we use is On Care for Our Common Home. I'm just going to read a few brief sentences from Francis's document. And he wrote, St. Francis of Assisi reminds us that our common home, Earth, is like a sister with whom we share our life, and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. Our sister, Mother Earth, cries out to us because of the harm we have inflicted on her by our irresponsible use and abuse of the goods with which God has endowed her. This is why Earth herself, burdened and laid waste, is among the most abandoned and maltreated of our poor. He continues, we have forgotten that we ourselves are dust of the earth. Our very bodies are made up of her elements. We breathe her air, and we receive life and refreshment from her waters. In this encyclical, I would like to enter into dialogue with all people about our common home. Today, the analysis of environmental problems cannot be separated from the analysis of human, family, work-related, and urban contexts, nor from how individuals relate to themselves, which leads in turn to how they relate to others and to the environment. There is an interrelation between ecosystems and between the various spheres of social interaction, demonstrating yet again that the whole is greater than the part. In addition, there are also documents related to Catholic social teaching that come from regional bishops' conferences. In the 1980s, the Catholic bishops of the United States wrote a document on peace called the Peace Pastoral, excuse me, and a document on the economy. Bishops in the regions of Appalachia and the Columbia River watershed have written pastoral letters about the challenges that their areas face for the environment and for the people. Also, letters have been written on racism and immigration. To the right, on the bottom here of the slide, you see a title page from two different letters written by individual bishops. On the extreme right in the corner, The title there is The Racial Divide in the United States. Bishop Braxton, 5 years ago, in 2015, wrote this pastoral letter. And it was connected with a year with the Pope's letter on World Peace Day from 2015. The Pope entitled that celebration of World Peace Day, "No Longer Slaves, but Brothers and Sisters." And it was Francis's reflection on modern slavery and trafficking, among other issues. So Bishop Braxton wrote a pastoral letter for his diocese, which now also has a study guide with it. And in this letter, he starts off, he invites people into an imaginative exercise. He wrote, "I would like to begin by asking you to do something rather unusual. It requires you to use your imagination in order to enter into the role reversal presented in the narrative that follows. The narrative portrays an imagined Catholic Church in the United States, in which most American Catholics are people of color, and white Catholics are members of a very small minority group." The bishop then lists any number of situations in relation to that. Again, in each one, inviting the person, those who are white Catholics, to envision themselves in the minority. What is it like walking down the street and being stopped by an African-American police officer? What does it mean to pray in that church that has art and religious symbols that reflect an African-American background? So the bishop leads those who are using that through that exercise. But as his letter continues, he has a section on recent killings, recent shootings that took place in our country. So again, that was written in 2015, but I think these names may be familiar to you. Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner. Those are just three of the people that he mentions who were shot violently, sometimes by police or at the hands of police officers, sometimes by others. And again, in that letter, he leads through a reflection on that. To the left of that slide, you see a second pastoral letter, "Night Will Be No More," written less than 1 year ago. On August 3rd, 2019, in El Paso, Texas, Patrick Crusius, a white man from a Dallas suburb, went into a Walmart in El Paso. He had guns with him. He walked through the Walmart, and in the process, he killed 20 people and shot 26 others who were wounded. Afterwards, a post was found online, and they attribute the writing of that to Patrick. And he wrote about that what he was doing was a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas. He outlined fears about Hispanic people gaining power in the United States. And so several months later, Bishop Seitz wrote a pastoral letter to the people of his diocese on racism and immigration. And so Catholic social teaching is not isolated from reality. In fact, that's where it finds its roots as well. Kathy, we can advance to the next slide. Catholic social teaching also is called Catholic social thought. When it doesn't have the same level of authority, let's say is coming from a pope or a bishop. But the document I mentioned at the beginning, 2015, the People's Pastoral from Appalachia, that's their reflection on the challenges of their region and their reflection as Christians interpreting what it means to follow Jesus, grounded in their environment, in their community, in all of the challenges that they face. As I was preparing for today, I came across some reflections from the Center for Social Concerns, which is connected to the University of Notre Dame. This obviously is very recent because they entitled it Living Catholic Social Teaching in Response to COVID-19. And I'll just mention one or two things. This is available online if you are a Googler, which I am. In relation to the common good, they say, even as we practice social distancing, we are reminded that our well-being is connected to that of others and vice versa. As one group of physicians put it, if our healthcare system fails, then we all will suffer. We know that the good of the whole community depends on the good of each person. So what they did in this document was they went through the 7 themes that I articulated a few moments ago and related those themes to different realities surrounding our attempt to deal with COVID-19. Also, religious congregations attempt to live out the themes of Catholic social teaching. I'll touch on the Dominicans more specifically in a moment, but to the right, you see a graphic there. It's actually the cover of the DVD, a film that you may have seen yourself, Of Gods and Men, the story of Cistercian monks in Algeria. Their community had been in the Atlas Mountains in Algeria for a number of years. And yet in the 1990s, Algeria had attained its independence, but was also experiencing civil war. And all people of foreign ancestry, the old Europeans, were told to leave the country. The monks decided to remain. Of Gods and Men is their story at that point. And if you have seen the movie, you remember how it reflects the monks, their connections, their solidarity with the Muslims of their area. The monks themselves, one was, I don't know if he was a doctor, but he was at least a nurse. And you can see the people who came to the clinic at their monastery. They served the sick, they worked the fields, they sold goods in the village market. They went to prayer gatherings with some of the Muslims in their homes. And their desire to remain faithful, their following of God's direction in their life was to remain faithful and to stay in that community. And for that, they were abducted, and each of the monks who was abducted came to his death by beheading. And so they lived out Catholic social teaching based on the scriptures. Kathy, if we go to the next slide, Catherine, we spoke about at the beginning, and also was reflected in that beautiful meditation piece, in that text. Other Dominicans who stand out in living out the themes of Catholic social teaching. After the Spanish came to what they then called the New World, Dominican friars also followed. And when they arrived in what now we call the Dominican Republic, then La Española or Hispaniola, they saw the way the Spanish were treating the native peoples, the Indians, the indigenous people. And as a community, the Dominican friars reflected on this together. And they asked one of their members to preach on a Sunday in Advent, which Antonio Montesinos did in 1511 on behalf of the Dominican community. And this was part of his sermon, which we have. Tell me by what right and with what justice do you hold these Indians in such horrible servitude? With what authority have you waged such detestable war, bringing havoc and death never before seen on these people who were living peacefully and calmly in their lands? How can you keep them so exhausted and oppressed without giving them food or curing their illnesses? Illnesses which were caused by the excessive work you have forced upon them and by which you caused their deaths, or more accurately put, by which you murder them. All of this, why? So you can daily acquire more gold. Are these not human beings? Do these people not have rational spirits? Are you not obliged to love them as you love yourselves? How can you remain lethargically in such a deep slumber? I would have squirmed if I was sitting there in that seat. We move ahead 500 years, again now to the 1990s in Algeria. And Pierre Claverie was a Dominican bishop in the city of Oran. He had grown up as from French parents, but his life in Algeria was totally separate from the Muslim community. And it was only later in life, through different things that happened to him, that he came to a realization, an awakening. And what this led him to was to study Islam and to engage in interfaith dialogue. But as I mentioned about the Cistercian monks, the same was true of Claverie. He and others were told to leave Algeria. He did not. He chose to remain faithful to the people there, Christian and non-Christian alike. In his writings and in his lifestyle, he embodied dignity and community and solidarity. And for that, he was killed on August 1st, 1996. On the next slide, we see that a group of people who work today in North America from their individual religious congregations, friars and sisters, form a group called the North American Dominican Promoters of Justice. And over time, they reflect on issues that are imperative to the day. And they have highlighted 5 in this year, 2020, that they will pursue probably at least 1 year, maybe 2. Climate justice, peace and security, migration and immigration, human trafficking, and economic justice. And in their document, which again you could find online, with each of these 5 areas, they raise a question. So for example, with climate justice, what do they pose for us? What role must I take in bringing about the kind of world I wish for all to inhabit? In relation to peace and security, how do I see the face of God in the whole of life, embrace the tenets of nonviolence, and practicing loving those that I see as other? So for each of these 5 realities, these 5 challenges in our world today, the Dominican promoters have posed questions that are reflective for us and invite others as we think about our own commitment and what we can give ourselves to make our world more whole. They help us in that endeavor. In the next slide, this is a reference to what we call in our congregation and other congregations call taking a corporate stance. And down the bottom, the statement against nuclear arms dates from 1985. The statement at the top on migration to 2018. And as, let's say, for example, a committee within our congregation would bring forward all of the ramifications of any of these issues for us, they would provide us with study material. Then we would engage in conversation and discussion, Dominican word disputatio, listen to each other's various opinions. And then at the end of that process, we would be invited to write our response, whether we can give ourselves to that particular statement. I don't remember the percentage. I think there is a percentage of a certain number of sisters who would agree to that. But once that's achieved, then it can be called a statement from the Sisters of St. Dominic, a statement from the congregation. And those statements are used in various times when we make when we're engaged in other situations to reflect what our beliefs are. The next several slides will move us to some of the particular members of our Dominican family. Now you only see a few, but remember again, it's sisters, associates, Dominican young adults, so many people, lay people who partner with us, who are engaged, who really are behind each of these pictures that you will see. So Kathy, go back one. Thank you. On the left there is the Opening Word program, a program of literacy for women who are immigrants, more than 25 years old in 3 sites, Amityville, Huntington, and Wyandanch, to help women with literacy for themselves and for their families, especially those who are parents. To the right is Homecoming Farm, which is part of Homecoming Ministries, which reminds us not only of the value of food for us and how Earth provides that, but Homecoming Ministry reminds us of the sacred web of life. On the next page, those in Molloy would have a great awareness of Bethany House, since Boxtown in support of Bethany House has been an event for many years, offering shelter and education and help with financials and financial planning for women, mothers, and for their children. The lower right, a graduate of Molloy, Sister Margaret Mace. For 11 years, she served as, on behalf of the Dominican Leadership Conference, in a position as an NGO at the United Nations. Now she works in Rome as the international coordinator for Dominican Sisters International. But obviously in her work on commissions and committees, lives out Catholic social teaching. On the next slide, back in July, when immigration issues were so much in the forefront, we had a prayer vigil on the front lawn of our mother house in Amityville. The banners that you see in upper left and lower right, they're still on the fence in front of our property to remind all of us that immigrant rights are human rights. The gentleman on the right, I'm pretty sure was a pediatrician at Good Samaritan Hospital, worked with one of our sisters, and is a leader in the Muslim community. And he was with us that day, joined in prayer and spoke. So as we come to the end of this part, the next slide reminds us what we said at the beginning. What does it mean to be human in this place? So whether we're thinking of Catherine or Montesinos, Pierre Claverie, whether we're thinking of lay people, bishops, ourselves, faculty, staff, students at Molloy, all of us are invited to think of Catherine this day, to walk on 2 feet, the feet of prayer and contemplation and action. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Everybody can use their icons and put little thumbs up. Thank you, Diane. I'm going to turn this program over to Dr. Maureen Carey.
Okay. So Kathy, you going to leave the screen up or?
I can take it down. I didn't know if you wanted me to leave it up for those other pieces, but I can stop it for now. There you go.
Yeah, I think it might be good to see everybody again. Hello,
There you
everybody.
go. Everybody's here. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
So Diane, thank you so much, really, for such powerful words. And it makes me think of the first painting in the meditation today, which was the image of a bridge. And which was one of Catherine's really popular metaphors. But I think what you were able to do as I was listening was to bridge for us a stronger connection between the Dominican path and the responsibility we all have to creating a more socially just world. I've always loved that motto, in the order to contemplate and to share the fruits of our contemplation. And just from what you were saying, that sharing the fruits of that contemplation, as you describe it, it's so active, it's so engaged, it's so strong in its immersion in the world. And that came through so loud and clear to me. So if it's okay with everybody, we're going to turn to our panelists, Melissa and Lisa and Ryan, for some reactions and some feedback from them. And just to remind you what Kathy said, if any of you do have some questions or comments or thoughts, you can put them into the chat format, and we'll get to that after we've finished talking for some time with our panelists. So I'm going to just begin with a very broad question. As each of you listened to Sister Diane weave together the story of the Dominican perspective on social justice, care for the earth, option for the poor, solidarity with one another and our most vulnerable, what is your response? What struck you the most? What reactions did you have from listening to the talk? So any one of you who would like to start?
I'll dive in. I don't know if folks saw, but I just shared an image in the chat. And I was thinking to your painting, Maureen, of Catherine on the move. And in Harlem on 122nd Street in Frederick Douglass, there is a gorgeous statue of Harriet Tubman, and she's poised in that same forward motion. And the statue is pointed south to commemorate the 13 trips that she took into the South to rescue enslaved people. And as I listened to the talk this morning, I couldn't help but think of the ways in which social justice has changed dramatically throughout our human history, but how at the core of it, we're all sort of called to remain in that forward motion and to charge towards justice, whatever that might be in our particular day and in our particular roles.
Great, Ryan. Lisa, do you want to say a few words, or Melissa?
Thank you for that image, Ryan. I've seen that statue several times as I used to live and work in Harlem. That was the beginning of my career. I remember the community meetings to arrange where it was going to be placed, and so I appreciate that reference. I think what most struck me is the appreciation for being centered in some of my own personal values and the values of my profession, because there is a consistent alignment between some of the aspects of the themes that were mentioned and social work values. And so what was most important for me in that moment of hearing Sister Diane speak was just a way of reconnecting with why I do some of the things that I do in terms of social justice work, but also feeling the energy from that forward facing, forward charging, kind of addressing the issues of the day. So I appreciated the reminder.
Great.
I want to echo the same idea of the action that was the movement really speaking to me. But I think what came out for me the most is the depth and the breadth of activity. So I think in my own connection at the college with different activities in terms of social justice, there's a lot of individual and family-based work. And I think that this history and talk really showed how much it goes from an individual to larger scale and to the professional, that there's such a breadth of things to be involved in, and that we are all taking as our lessons and our actions.
Great. And I'll have to, Ryan, look at that piece that you referenced about Harriet Tubman, because I'm doing this series of drawings of different people that have modeled, I think, what we're talking about today. And one of them is Harriet Tubman. I haven't done it yet, but I have some photos of her. So I'll have to also look at that to see as I move into that. But yeah, that forward thinking idea. And I think what I'd love to do now is just ask each of you, you know, all three of you are faculty who represent an interesting slice of Molloy. We have, for those of you who are not at Molloy, we have 2 different schools of our 4 schools are represented. Melissa Gebbia is from the School of Arts and Sciences and is the chair of psychology. And then we have the School of Education and Human Services. And we have Lisa, who is faculty council president at this time. She's also chairperson of the department that I'm in, social work. And Ryan is in the education, the Division of Education, but he teaches in the doctoral program, and the title of the doctoral program is Educational Leadership for Diverse Learning Communities. So it's very much in keeping with what we're talking about today. So from each of your multiple lenses, can you talk a little bit about how you are in your own personal and professional life, reflecting what we've just talked about, what Diane has talked about, and how is either your school or discipline integrating social justice perspectives with our mission here at Molloy? How are we connecting with what Diane spoke about to what we are doing here? And how are you connecting in your own lives and work?
I'll go first
Shall
this
I?
time if you want.
Sure, Melissa.
Okay, so I really found the theme about call to family, community, and participation. That's the thing that resonated with me, because personally, I've been involved for about 20 years as a volunteer in different roles for Girl Scouts of Nassau County. But something happened about 10 years ago where a fellow volunteer reached out and knew that the critical issues area at Girl Scouts was having research issues. They were doing great programs and they didn't know how to demonstrate the use of them, the utility. And so making this connection, I got drawn in, and over the 10 years, Molloy has served Girl Scouts of Nassau County with our transformative education by having students be involved in research, bringing programming to campus, bringing students out into the community, to the troops. And it's just something that keeps reinventing itself. And I think that's part of what's so important about this, is responding to the need. And we change and do different things as the community needs us to do that. And that's been my experience with so many things that we've done at Molloy, but it really, I can see the length of that activity and how over time we just keep coming back and giving what the community needs at the moment.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah.
So one thing that strikes me is the fact that I came to Molloy in 2005, and the one class that I have taught continuously is the macro practice class, which is an opportunity for students to learn and connect to different roles in social work. Most of them come in already knowing that they want to go into clinical practice and work with children and families, and do individual clinical work, which is important, but the course gives them a broader lens. And it's the last course that they take in their social work education practice sequence, and it exposes them to some new ideas. And so I love the moments where the students come alive with some passions for advocacy and social justice in a slightly different way. There are other courses where they make those connections, but this course has more experiential learning activities. We've taken students to Albany to be part of legislative action days with other social work education programs across New York State. We've introduced students to the role of being a program developer and being responsive, like Melissa says, this theme of responsiveness to these broader social issues. We give them some tools that help them begin to think about what I call their macro mind, and how they can use that mindset in all aspects of their social work practice. And it doesn't just have to be focused on the one-on-one person and environment types of issues that they respond to. So that's clearly been my joy. My department knows how much I enjoy teaching that class and watching the students move through an experience of engaging with that type of content. I would also say in some of my personal activities, this whole idea of responsiveness. And for me, I also add in cultural responsiveness. I'm very aware, as many of us are, of the disparities and the distress that comes from the disparities that we all experience. So whether it's a marginalized community because of a socioeconomic status, or an ethnic community and experiencing disparities in various systems, the responsiveness has been something that I've always been called to, whether it's within organizations, professional organizations, or through churches and other groups. So I just really recognize that the alignment between recognizing certain realities, as distressing as they may be, along with responsiveness and working toward healing and restoration, is an important work that many of us engage in.
Lisa, you're involved in quite a few connections or different groups that you are involved in. Can you just mention a couple of them, because I think they're so important?
Sure. So when I was a BSW student, I was introduced to the National Association of Black Social Workers. I went to a historically Black college in Maryland, and our faculty talked about how important it is to be part of social work organizations. And they also really promoted NABSW. So I've had a career-long engagement, some more active than others, in my time frame with that organization. So currently I'm the president of our Long Island chapter. And it was something that I was very passionate about, making sure that chapter kind of came back to life, because in about maybe I've started really looking into them. So I'm a Long Islander since 2005. I guess I started looking at them since maybe 2007. And there were a lot of older members in the chapter, just a few of them. They were doing very small projects. They didn't have an organizational presence and identity in broad areas. And so thankfully I was awarded a sabbatical in 2013 from Molloy to really do some innovative work on reestablishing that chapter. And so I'm very thankful for some of those efforts. And more recently, as the chapter has grown and has taken on a lot of different activities that we do on the Long Island area, there's been some work done by a group of several Black organizations, including psychologists, nurses, psychiatrists, administrators in child welfare, that make this convened group called the Black Family Summit. And this organization has more recently been involved in addressing disparities with the COVID-19 pandemic and looking at developing responsive efforts. So what I appreciate is being able to bring in younger students. I have one of our BSW graduates who's working with us on that project, as well as an MSW student from Stony Brook. So while I was mentored through that organization, I'm now able to bring younger professionals, students in for the purpose of staying connected to that mission.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And Ryan, how about you? Any reflections that you'd like to offer? You're involved in a lot of things, and you've been at Molloy a short time, but you're a person that raises your hand and says, "I'll be."
And my
But
hand's
tell
always
us-
up. Yeah, I'll just start by saying that in my very short time here, I've really appreciated Molloy's support and call for all of us to be social justice leaders, and to live out the mission of this college in our teaching, in our scholarship, and in our personal lives. And I take a lot of pride in that, and I take a lot of pride in the doctoral program where I teach. We explicitly call upon all of our doctoral students to be social justice leaders from the very beginning of their time. And I see a couple of our doctoral students on here, and I'd like us all to applaud, particularly those who are graduating, who are newly minted doctors as of today or a few days ago. So, and I'm certain that they're all going to take what they've learned at Molloy and use that to truly be social justice leaders as they move through the world with their new degrees. And then I think of sort of the ways in which Molloy supports me to continue pursuing my scholarship. My scholarship focuses on equity, diversity, and inclusion in our schools. Dr. Rhoda, who's another professor in our program, and I just put out a book called Making School Integration Work. And it's about a school district in New Jersey that has really pushed to embrace the diversity of its student body and to really work towards an equitable and inclusive education for all of its students. And just related to that, a lot of my research is based in New Jersey because I got my PhD at Rutgers, and I'm currently involved in a lawsuit in New Jersey. We've sued the state of New Jersey because of the inequitable and segregated school system that remains in that state. And I remain involved pulling together data and supporting that effort so that we can move to a more integrated school system there. I guess I'll just share on a personal level. I started pursuing the study of love a few years ago, and
Really?
have run a yes, it's and I was thinking about this particularly during your reflection, and one of the slides said that genuine truth can only be spoken with love. And
Yes.
I started this pursuit because I realized that as adults, many of us don't really understand what love is, and we throw the word around a lot. And we've sort of landed on a definition by a Harvard psychiatrist that love is the willingness to extend oneself for one's own or another's spiritual growth. And I use that in my day-to-day life. I use that with my students as I really pursue my own growth and the growth of those around me through love.
Ryan, I love that. That's really, really great. And maybe just if you wouldn't mind, Ryan, and then maybe Lisa picking up on it, in our own School of Education and Human Services that is guided and led by Joanne O'Brien. Talk a little bit about the new mission statement that we've drafted, and then Melissa, maybe a little bit about the one that you've drafted in Arts and Sciences, trying to have these statements be more and more reflective, not just of quote unquote the work we do, but also of understanding what stands behind us, what informs who we are as a college community, and that is this Dominican path. So Ryan was on the committee with myself and several others, and we have a copy of it, but I don't know if without or with the copy, you could just say something about it, and then Lisa maybe echo some of those thoughts.
Sure. I'll just, the process that we went through as a committee to build this new mission statement was really exciting, particularly as a new faculty member. We looked back on the various forms that mission statements have existed at Molloy and in the various divisions that came together to be part of the School of Education and Human Services. And you know, it was quite the process to pull all of the incredible work that our community does into this one statement. And so you see it up here on the screen, and I'll let you read that for yourself, but I'll also just say that behind the mission statement, we wanted this to be a living document that really did guide our work. So along with pulling together this mission statement, we developed 3 goals that we want to hold ourselves to as a school as we really pursue this mission. And I'll just mention one of them. The first of those goals is to really pursue diversity, equity, and inclusion in all that we do. And I look forward to building upon that goal and making sure that we live that out in our mission.
Great. And Lisa, I don't know if you want to add to that. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but.
That's okay. I can remember when the committee presented the draft mission statement and goals to the school. And I commented in the meeting, but my thought was that it's so critical for us to be able to define ourselves. And as we were going through the process as a college of forming schools and doing academic reorganization, we talked about the importance of schools really taking time to ground themselves in an identity and to have that identity flow through our teaching, flow through our learning experiences with our students and everything that we do. So I was excited when I saw this mission. I thought it was perfect. I think there might have been one thing that we all agreed, you know, might need to shift, but it really just served to ground us. It really gave us back that intentionality about who we are. And it just gave us also an opportunity to think about how to best collaborate. So those are some conversations that I really look forward to. We do have a subcommittee on interdisciplinary collaborations, and really thinking about how to weave this mission through the work of social work, clinical mental health counseling, and education. We are going to really walk out Catherine's phrase of being a woman on fire. We're going to be a school on fire. Get ready, Molloy. We are going to be a school on fire.
And before I let Melissa also talk about her new school, and she's going to say it's more on fire than we are. So just be prepared for that. But one of the things that I loved about the work we did together was we talked about, Molloy uses the phrase in our mission statement of being a transformative education. But I think what we all really wanted to emphasize is that we can't transform our students or anybody else if we ourselves are not willing to be engaged in that process ourselves. So one of our goals speaks to this idea of a transformative education needs to begin with us as faculty, as educators, modeling that we ourselves are growing as well all the time. So I thought that was also a very exciting part to it. And Melissa, I wonder if you could say, I know we have, yours is also a draft, but if you wanted to speak to it a little bit.
Sure. So I was fortunate to work on the committee that drafted this. I worked with Maureen Sands from biology and Connie Lasher from theology. And what we really worked hard to do was to represent how the School of Arts and Sciences is the heart and the center of every student's education at Molloy. And so that transformative education really does start with us and the diversity of disciplines that are represented in arts and sciences. But we worked very hard to build in the responsibility of our students, and that's what we're trying to instill the values. So you'll see at the bottom the ethical, scientific, and humanistic values being part of our mission as we develop these students into responsible citizens with this goal of bettering the society around them, and not only pursuing something in their professional lives, but their personal lives as well that contributes. But that lifelong learning is still there, that transformative education is there from the beginning. And I won't say anything about fire, but there is great passion in the arts and sciences to really sculpt our students before they go into all of the other professional areas.
That's great. I know we're running out of time because we want to allow a couple of minutes, Kathy, right, for some conversation, some questions from anybody who's here for Sister Diane, right?
Yes, if anybody
Okay.
would like to ask, put some questions in the chat. I will just share, Andrea Honigsfeld has thanked you for highlighting the importance of collaboration and exemplifying it through this event. It is an honor to know and work with all of you. So thank you, Andrea.
Great.
Does anybody have any questions for any of the panelists or for Sister Diane, who is still on? Or any thoughts that they would like to share? We are a large group, but if you put up your hand, I could also unmute you. But
Kathy, if it's okay, I had one
Sure.
final, I think it's
Sure.
a question that might move us in this direction, but I wanted to ask the panelists and it, yes, we're doing good things, or Molloy is trying to incorporate more and more of this perspective into where it hits the road, where the rubber hits the road, I guess is the expression. But what are your thoughts for the college? We're not perfect. We're not doing things perfectly. Where do you think we need to go? What are some future directions that you see us moving into, or that you wish we would be moving into? I'll ask that to the three of you, and then any of our colleagues that are here today might want to also echo some thoughts on that.
So I'll just chime in and I'll be quick with this. I think we could take some guidance from the Dominican sisters, this whole idea of a corporate stance. And what it means to take a position on injustices publicly, I think is something that we need to have further discussion on. I would love to see us as an institution have a group of people who are charged with watching. The Bible encourages us to watch and pray, so to kind of watch for the injustices in society and think about ways to be responsive, not just in our own programs and activities with students, but as an institution.
Yeah, I love that idea too. And there may be a way that we could collaborate with that North American Promoters of Justice. Diane, what do you think about that?
I think it's a wonderful idea. I don't know how you would achieve it in the institution that is Molloy, but yes, it's how to have that corporate voice. That's what a corporate stance is. How to have a corporate voice. And I'm sure the justice promoters or whomever, there are so many other people involved in this area, could give you insights and be helpful.
Maureen, if I could add here, the one slide we didn't share yet, but we had talked about is the, and I'll share it now, is the new charge to the new Siena Center for Social Justice. That this is hard to see because I didn't know how to shorten this, but I believe that as an institution, with the help of the advisory board and people involved in administration, that we could issue those or ask for people to think about a corporate stance and get people, the climate of the campus and how people are feeling.
Great
and we could
idea.
use that as a vehicle for the college to be able to issue that from the Siena Center for Social Justice. As you see, that the tagline on that is the dialogue, diversity, and inclusion. So, and there are many people, including some of your panelists, who are on the advisory board, and we're right now, in fact, we're meeting tomorrow to talk about what the college's diversity statement would look like.
Great. Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions? Laura has a question, maybe? Do you see that, Kathy? Laura Kestenberg?
No. Laura, are you there? Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, yeah, no, it was just, I just wanted to thank Ryan earlier for posting those 2 images, and it just made me think of all the images we're seeing of women on the front lines, you know, and also as moms and just keeping all the things going, that forward movement. It was a very powerful visual image that I really resonated with. So I just wanted to thank him for that image that he posted. And also I was thinking that, you know, social work, counseling, education, you know, these things, these ideas always resonate with us with social justice. I'm always wondering how to get other people in the college who might not be as, might not be in their forefront of thinking all the time with these things, like how to collaborate with them, you know, because we have a strong presence being social workers, counselors out, you know, working in the community, social justice. So I think, you know, we do much better than other institutions. You know, business has had initiatives with this as well, obviously, as an example, but just that was my thinking, how to collaborate with the other areas in the college.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody want to respond to that, or anybody else have closing remarks? Because we're at 5 to 11, believe it or not. This has gone very fast. I thank everybody. Sister Diane, any closing remarks for all of us?
No, just really one of gratitude. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this. Extremely impressed with the faculty members and their work and their, not just their background, but all of the richness of experience and wisdom that they bring to their work at the college. So for each of you, thank you for that. And it would just be my hope that this does plant some seeds of reflection within each one of us. And as always, how reflection will lead us to action with one another, not just individually. So
and, and Sister Diane, what is the question?
What does it mean to be human in this place?
There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. For Lisa, Melissa, Ryan, any closing remarks? I thank the 3 of you. You, again, as Molloy, I am always so grateful for my colleagues, but the 3 of you and Sister Diane said yes right away, and I can't thank you enough for sharing your expertise and really yourselves with us today.
Yeah.
Maureen and Joanne. Maureen, thank you for moderating. The questions were terrific, timely. It's a very timely topic for all of us. And Joanne and Maureen, thank you for putting together the meditation, because it really set us off as to where we wanted to be in this place together. So I thank you all. This was a wonderful day to celebrate the Feast of St. Catherine of Siena. I'm very proud that it's my feast day. I shared with people yesterday that when I was 6 years old, it was the Feast of All Saints. They dressed me up as Catherine, so the writing was on the wall way back then. So I hope you all have a blessed day, and anybody who generally joins us for coffee talk, or if anybody wants to join us for coffee talk, please join us tomorrow. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you.
Diane.
Thank
You were
you.
great.
Thank you.
Diane,
Bye
thank
now.
you so much.
Bye. Thank
It
you.
was very nice. Have a great day. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye, Alice Danner.